Two opposing powers, one resembling radiant, winged angels, continue their eternal clash between good and evil. These factions have existed since the dawn of time, shifting names from era to era, region to region. Yet, their destiny remains unchanged. The battle never ceases. On a desolate battlefield, littered with the fallen, the two leaders, each from opposing sides, finally confront one another. For the first time in their long history, they share a common sentiment, the desire to end the conflict. This unprecedented moment leads to the heroes and villains peace convention, marking the end of an age-old war between light and darkness. News spreads quickly. The so-called villains announce the cessation of their invasion of mankind and declare plans to build a nation of their own, choosing cooperation over conquest. Their new homeland is named the Republic of Naruraka. Elsewhere, a grieving mother breaks down upon hearing the news. Her husband, a casualty of the long war, will never return. Her daughter, also in tears, tries to comfort her. Watching the peace broadcast, the daughter gazes at the villain leader delivering his speech and is struck by how human he seems. Despite initial concerns, Naruraka's decision proves to be a positive turning point. The Naruraka Foundation donates a staggering $10 billion to the Association of Mankind, solidifying goodwill. Their citizens live in mutual harmony, and public criticism gradually fades. Time moves forward, and an era of peace takes root. Now, today's headlines announce a major milestone. The Association of Mankind celebrates the 10th anniversary of its diplomatic ties with Naruraka. In honor of the occasion, a peace conference is officially scheduled to be held in Naruraka. Meanwhile, a major political shift unfolds. The National Assembly passes a resolution to abolish the hero ministry, citing its declining relevance. Heroes protest the decision, demanding recognition as an independent organization. Still, to the general public, the terms heroes and villains feel like relics of a forgotten age. Life goes on and peace holds until 3 years later, in the shadowed corners of downtown, deep in a dark alley, a horrifying sight emerges. A villain feasts on a man. Suddenly, he senses another presence. Someone stands behind him. A blonde, injured guy is sitting on the ground. In front of him, Gangchi Han stands, facing a huge, horrendous monster. The monster calls him trash and tries to attack, but Gangchi Han doesn't back down. He says he's not trash, clenches his fist, and golden power shines from it. He punches the monster. This guy, Gangchi Han, always dreams of being number one, but in school, he always comes out last, or second to last. He's bad at sports, and he's not good at games either. He feels like he's not good at anything. People say everyone is good at something, so he wonders, why isn't he? Still, he hopes. He hopes there is something out there that he can be the best at. One day on the street, two strange men come up to Gangchi Han. They say he has something special around him, making him feel a little excited, but it turns out they're merely bullies asking for money. He says he has none. Then the bald bully tells him to just give him the money. His partner gets angry, and they start arguing. Gangchi Han tries to escape while they fight, but they notice and catch him. The bald bully starts hitting him, demanding the money. Gangchi Han can't take the pain anymore, and he punches the bald one. This punch is so strong it sends him flying into a building. The other bully gets super angry and attacks, but Gangchi Han hits the other bully, sending him crashing into the building too. He wonders if this is just a coincidence or something meant to happen. He feels a sudden power waking up inside him, a hidden talent that could make him the best. He knows he has become incredibly strong, so he tells his friend about it, but his friend isn't impressed. His friend says that even though he got stronger, he still needs to choose a field where he can become number one. Gangchi replies that he will start looking for one. His friend reminds him that he is only a high school senior in Korea. There are only two ways to show off physical talent. One is to become an athlete, which could bring pride to the country, but this path needs a lot of money for personal care and professional training. It's also risky because it's like investing in unpopular stocks, and even joining a competition costs a lot. The second way is to join the military or become a 9th grade firefighter or policeman. Jobs and security, justice, and civil service are safe for the future, but they are very competitive. Almost 10,000 people apply to the military academy every year, with a competitive rate of 44.4 to 1. And this year alone, 160,000 people applied for 9th grade civil servant jobs. His friend then asks if his family is rich or if he is good at studying. The answer is no. So his friend tells him to give up. There are people more talented than him, and even talent needs the right qualifications. With a hoe-ass nigga right now, he doesn't have those. His friend says it's better just to focus on studying. Then, his friend remembers a job that doesn't need money or brains, only strength. Being a gangster. Pyru's. No, I'm playing. Later, Gangchi Han is with a group of gangsters. They go to meet the leader of the mischief gang, Kwak Do-shik. The group bows to show respect. Do-shik notices them and asks, who are they? One of his men says they want to become the top gangsters. Do-shik walks up to the guy and asks if he has done things that people can't talk about. The guy's face turns serious. Two detectives rush in, trying to arrest Kwak Do-shik and his gang, but they are shocked to find everyone already beaten badly. Later, Gangchi Han is seen walking alone in the park. He sits on a bench and quietly says that he's back. And just then, a man steps out from behind the flowers. It's Han Do-jin, known as the flower beggar, who says Gangchi Han must have had a rough day to come and see him. Do-jin, in a playful tone, asks what's wrong. Gangchi Han tells him to send him to an academy. Do-jin laughs, saying he doesn't look like someone who has that kind of power or money. As two women walk by, Do-jin pretends to be cool, which makes them admire him as they pass. Do-jin then questions Gangchi Han's sudden change of heart. He reminds him that he once said he wanted to be number one in some fields. He wonders if Gangchi Han has given up on finding his talent. Gangchi Han replies that people need to be qualified to follow their talents, but they are beggars, so they don't qualify. Do-jin asks if he likes studying. Gangchi Han says no. Do-jin tells him not to force it, saying there is no such thing as needing a qualification to have talent. He explains that the talent is a rare and valuable gift in life. He then asks Gangchi Han if he doesn't see how happy he is living as a beggar because of his exceptional looks. But just then, Do-jin dives into a bush as two gangsters appear. They're looking for him because he ran off with their money and threatened to punish him if they find him. After they pass, Gangchi Han stands up and says he's leaving. He tells Do-jin to stay hidden and calls him Dad. Do-jin then hands him a piece of paper, saying it's a present. He tells him to go to the place written on it, where people will recognize his strength and he'll find a true use for his power. Surprise. He asks how Do-jin knows he's strong, but Do-jin just says it's a secret before hiding again in the flowers. He looks at the paper. It says there's no need for education or experience, only strength is needed. This surprises him, since it's the complete opposite of what his friend told him. It turns out to be a recruitment flyer for a hero's internship program. Gangchi Han arrives in front of a building with a determined expression and walks inside. At the same time, a blond man arrives at the same building. Checking the document in his hand, he confirms that it's the right place. Though he finds it hard to believe that a company is located in such a rundown building, he wonders if he is lost, but decides this must be the correct location and heads in. Later, he stands in a crowded elevator going up. People around him chat about different things as the elevator rises. More people get off until he is left alone. He comments on how noisy it was and thinks the neighborhood feels cheap. His name is An De-young, a 35-year-old currently unemployed man. He questions whether applying to this company is the right decision. It's the only place that didn't care about education, work experience, or age. His parents constantly asked him about his future, and this was the only place that accepted him. He finds the company name odd, but decides not to care as long as he gets a job. As he leaves the elevator, he notices a woman with purple hair glaring at him. He is surprised, realizing he didn't even see her get on. He can tell she is in a bad mood. Suddenly, a woman calls him out. She introduces herself as Kim Tani, the administration clerk for the first branch of Heroes. De-young is stunned by how she looks so cute and thinks she resembles that of an elf. Before he can speak, she comments on exactly what he was thinking, that her ears are unique. He is startled by her ability to read his thoughts. Kim Tani explains that the company hasn't received a single application in 12 years, and she's not sure why. Dae-young becomes excited, thinking this means he already passed. But Kim Tani says that they have 2 applicants today and asks him to wait beside the other one. Dae-young looks over and sees a high school student sitting quietly. He feels irritated, thinking it's strange that a student's applying. When the student doesn't acknowledge him, Dae-young turns away, thinking kids these days are so rude. Then, the high school student stands up and introduces himself as Gangchi Han. He says he will be also taking the interview and wishes they both to do their best, bowing slightly. At this point, Dae-young's opinion of him improves after that. Kim Tani gestures for both applicants to come in, and they sit across from her and a man with red hair. Dae-young watches as Kim Tani carefully reviews their resumes, wondering if the company really has no employees. His attention shifts to the red-haired man, noticing the tattoo under his eye. It makes him feel uneasy, though he can't help but be intrigued. Kim Tani begins her interview with Dae-young, asks detailed questions about his experience and thoroughly going through the activities listed on his resume. Dae-young realizes that Kim Tani is very thorough with it. She seems fully engaged, and her professionalism makes him think that this could actually be a legitimate company. As she prepares to interview the next applicant, the red-haired man, who has been quiet until now, interrupts. He calls out the dullness of her questions and suggests skipping to the more important ones. He introduces himself as Kim Watering, one of the 8 trigrams of the company, known as the Flame Warrior. Dae-young notices that one of Waring's eyes is completely black, making him wonder if it's a contact lens. Waring bluntly asks both applicants if they are strong. Dae-young, already uneasy about this man's intense presence, wonders what kind of test is this. Gangchi confidently answers that he is strong, and Waring immediately stands up, declaring the interview over. This sudden move shocks even Kim Tani, who tries to follow him, asking for clarification. Waring, however, remains calm and explains that since Gangchi has said he's strong, there is no need for further questions. Kim Tani disagrees, insisting that the interview process must adhere to the strict standards outlined by the headquarters. She argues that they couldn't select candidates without considering all requirements, including physical and mental ability tests. While acknowledging her point, Waring remains nonchalant. He passes Kim Tani a yellow craft card, explaining that he's too tired to visit the headquarters after preparing for a seminar. He casually tells her that the 2 applicants should be sent with the yellow card since it proves they've passed. According to him, any intern with the yellow card won't be refused by headquarters. Kim Tani is stunned, but Waring stays firm. She can't accept his nonchalance though, and snaps at him. She warns him that passing applicants so easily and handing out yellow cards could get them killed, especially if they're unqualified. She insists that he stop treating the situation like a joke. Waring's expression turns sour, his mood shifting as he coldly questions if Kim Tani is trying to order him around. Immediately, Kim Tani's posture softens, and she meekly denies it, clearly startled by his intensity. Waring, unbothered, continues walking away, casually telling her to inform Pung-soon. Kim Tani watches him leave, her mind racing with uncertainty as she wonders what is Waring truly plotting. Meanwhile, Dae-young is left stunned when they are told that their first task is to go on a villain extermination mission. He questions how they've just passed the intern interview and are already being thrown into something as dangerous. Frustrations bubble up inside him as he rants about the company revealing its true nature. He complains that Waring didn't even check their qualifications and instead asked about their strength, leading to Dae-young to believe that the company is offering illegal services. In a moment of frustration, he declares that he'll quit because he refused to work in such a manner, no matter how difficult finding a job is. However, the official in charge remains unfazed, simply informing them that they need to bring their seal and sign their contract the next day. The official goes on to explain that the company provides 4 major insurances, a salary of $3,200, and performance bonuses. Hearing this, Dae-young's mood shifts, and he immediately agrees, deciding to go along with it despite his earlier complaints. Later, they find themselves in a supply room, where the official hands them transformation suits to change into. Gangchi slips into a black uniform while Dae-young wears a red one. Gangchi then asks for a belt, commenting that the pants are too big for him. Afterwards, the officials introduce them to their equipment, a laser gun, model 2001. He warns them that it's dangerous to fire at people, stressing that they should avoid using it recklessly. The official further explains that if they go down to the first floor, they'll find everything they need, including batteries, which they'll have to buy and plug in before use. He then dismisses them, signaling that they are ready to go. Daeyoung and Gangchi are standing outside the building, the bustling city around them only adding to Daeyoung's irritation. He grumbles about how they weren't given any proper explanation about what they're supposed to do next. Just as he voices his frustration, his phone buzzes with a new message from the company. He glances at it, disbelief creeping onto his face as he wonders if they are really expected to fight bad guys. Curious, Daeyoung turns to Gangchi and asks if he has a messaging app. Gangchi nonchalantly responds that he's not getting any Wi-Fi around. Daeyoung sighs in resignation and suggests that they get going, hoping they'll figure things out once they reach the location. As he opens the message again, his attention is drawn to an emoji at the bottom of the text. He remarks how this emoji is everywhere lately. With about 2 million subscribers, the company wants them to track down and take out this emoji called cheap, and the location given is Narumi Lake Park. Daeyoung's shock deepens as he calculates the travel time. It'll take them at least an hour and a half to reach the park. He turns to Gangchi and asks if he has any cash, to which Gangchi simply shakes his head, replying that he doesn't. The scene shifts to them sitting in a cab. The driver, noticing their unusual outfits, compliments them, asking if they're part of a performance team. Out of embarrassment, Daeyoung reluctantly says yes, sighing quietly to himself. Gangchi, seemingly amused, tells him not to cry, causing Daeyoung to snap back. He asks Gangchi if he thinks it's funny that, at his age, he's stuck doing this kind of thing. Gangchi responds with a simple, "No." Daeyoung's curiosity grows, and he asks why Gangchi is working at a place like this instead of focusing on his studies as a student. Gangchi's expression becomes serious as he explains that studying alone won't help him achieve what he truly wants. He shares that he has to be the best, standing out so much that everyone, without exception, knows who he is. Daeyoung, still processing this, finds himself wondering what Gangchi really means by that. He doesn't quite believe anyone would recognize him in a place like this. And in that moment, Daeyoung can't help but think that Gangchi is a little foolish. Daeyoung and Gangchi finally arrive at the park, where Gangchi thanks Daeyoung for the ride, and Daeyoung reassures him not to worry about it. As they walk around, Daeyoung comments that it seems like there is a festival going on, but he can't help but wonder how they are supposed to find Cheap in such a large and crowded place. They move closer to a large gathering of people, and Daeyoung suddenly realizes that the performer on stage is actually Cheap, the very person they are looking for. The crowd is cheering excitedly, and the moderator announces that to celebrate the 12th anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic relations with Naruraka, Cheap has come all the way from Naruraka to enjoy the lake festival with everyone. The crowd goes wild, admiring Cheap and calling him adorable. Cheap later seen having a photo shoot with a little girl, who eventually leaves, and soon it's Daeyoung and Gangchi's turn. They take pictures with Cheap, and Daeyoung, eager to get to the point, reveals that they are newcomers from the Hero Association and asks if they can take him out. I don't think they understood what it meant. To Daeyoung's surprise, Cheap excitedly exclaims that he has been waiting for them and is actually a secret agent for the Heroes. He claims he will give them an item from Heroes that they will definitely need later on. Cheap then asks a man nearby if it's okay for him to leave, and the man agrees. Cheap invites Daeyoung and Gangchi to follow him, and Daeyoung, still believing in Cheap's story, thinks that taking him out must be some sort of secret phrase. Meanwhile, Gangchi looks more cautious as they follow Cheap, who remains vague about the item, saying that it's something that a hero desperately needs when performing heroic tasks. He claims he has hidden it well to ensure no one finds it. Cheap leads them to a quiet alley and tells them that the item is in the trash can. Daeyoung, eager to see what it is, moves towards the trash can, but before he can investigate, everything changes in an instant. He's suddenly sent flying into the air by a powerful punch from Cheap, blood splurting out of his mouth as he crashes to the ground. Gangchi is shocked, but before he can react, Cheap grabs him and pins him against the wall, coldly stating that a garbage can is where people put garbage. Daeyoung lies on the floor, unmoving, while Cheap turns to Gangchi, his expression menacing. Cheap asks Gangchi if he's surprised. Then he taunts him, saying that he had to hold back in front of the crowd, referring to them as tasty humans. But now, he claims, it's a whole different story, because Gangchi is a hero. Gangchi tries to reach for his laser gun, but Cheap effortlessly tosses it away. He grabs Gangchi's hand, and before he can react, Cheap begins to devour it. Gangchi lets out a muffled scream as Cheap consumes his hand, declaring that he tastes as delicious as he expected. As Gangchi seems to fade, Cheap prepares to finish him off by opening his massive mouth to devour him whole. Pause. But in a final effort, Gangchi lands a powerful punch with his free arm, sending Cheap stumbling back, visibly surprised by the force. Cheap, now looking even more dangerous, glares at Gangchi with a cruel smile, and he decides, I need to devour him all at once. He delivers another punch that pushes Gangchi back against the wall, and just as his mouth opens to end Gangchi's life, a figure appears out of nowhere. This person, holding a weapon, points it directly at Cheap's mouth and coldly comments that Cheap looks nauseating. At that moment, Cheap freezes in place, his body unable to move as he wonders, who is this mysterious man? The man briefly glances at Cheap and with a swift motion sends him flying through the air. However, Cheap manages to land gracefully on his feet, his mind racing to process what just happened. The man, with an aura of immense power surrounding him, casually claims that he is a hero. It turns out that the man is the second trigram of heroes, first branch, known by his nickname, Wind Elf. His name, Yeonpung. Cheap recognizes Yeonpung instantly. He knows that this hero is on an entirely different level from anyone he has encountered before. Yeonpung walks toward him, radiating a terrifying energy. Cheap, feeling the weight of his presence, hastily tries to remind Yeonpung of the peace treaty between Naruraka and the heroes, urging him not to forget the terms. However, Yeonpung doesn't seem bothered by Cheap's plea. He coldly retorts that Cheap has no right to speak of peace after the two interns ended up in such terrible states. With a calm, almost detached demeanor, Yeonpung raised his hand, revealing a distinct mark on the back of his hand. Seeing the symbol, Cheap's eyes widen in fear. He knows what that signifies. The mark is unmistakable. Yeonpung is one of the 8 trigrams, and he is not someone to be trifled with. Cheap, now fully realizing the danger, makes a desperate leap into the air, aiming to escape. He moves from rooftop to another, his heart pounding with fear, as he understands that if he doesn't get away, his life is surely forfeit. But to his shock, Yeonpung is already standing directly in front of him. Before he can react, Yeonpung slams him into the ground with an overwhelming force. In a panic, Cheap tries to spin the situation in his favor, claiming that the 2 interns attacked him first, and he only acted out of fear. He even offers to surrender, hoping that that might spare him. But Yeonpung is unamused and unfazed, stating flatly that he still intends to kill him. Cheap, realizing that his attempts to reason have failed, frantically tries to argue that it is the hero's duty to reform villains who surrender. He insists that he has learned his lesson and should be shown mercy. But Yeonpung is not swayed by Cheap's word. With a chilling calmness, he conjures a fearsome wind magic known as the Tempest of Blade. Second evolution, Tempest Tunnel Strike. That's a mouthful. Pause. A violent gust of wind surges toward Cheap, and in an instant, the force of the attack slams into him. Cheap screams in agony and terror as the wind magic tears through him, his body racked with pain. Dae-young, still sprawled on the ground, watches in stunned silence as Yeonpung effortlessly deals with Cheap, who screams for mercy fill the air. His mind races with questions, one of which is who Yeonpung really is. Cheap, though writhing in pain, continues to endure the attack, knowing that transforming now would seal his fate. But eventually, the pressure is too much, and he can no longer hold back. In an instant, he transformed from a harmless entertainer into a monstrous villain, a sight that Yeonpung had already anticipated. As the transformation unfolds, Cheap's monstrous form grows more terrifying. He notices with a mix of anger and disbelief that part of his body is torn, the result of Gangchi's earlier punch. It hits him then, the full weight of Gangchi's strength, and he recalls the damage he sustained. It becomes clear that Cheap's true form is that of a yellow-class monster chief. At the final stage of evolution, he admits, begrudgingly, that Yeonpung is indeed a formidable hero, impressed by the hero's overwhelming power. However, Cheap insists that this new transformation makes him invincible. He believes that no one can defeat him now. Yet, even as he speaks with newfound confidence, he cannot shake the memory of Gangchi's punch, which had affected him more than he was willing to admit. Cheap, still raging, declares that even if it costs him his life, he will drag Yeonpung to the depths of hell with him. With a roar, he attempts to strike Yeonpung with his fangs. However, before he can make contact, he is struck by Yeonpung's counterattack, and Cheap's monstrous form is shredded into strips. The devastating power of the 6th evolution of the Tempest of the Blade, Arcane Overflow Release, finishes the job, and Cheap is reduced to nothing. disappearing into thin air. With the threat neutralized, Yunpeng calmly asked Gangchi of his condition. Kim Tani, who had been monitoring Gangchi's vitals, reports that Gangchi's condition is still unstable, but he is no longer in critical danger. The advanced regeneration techniques are working on his severed arm, and although it's nothing short of a miracle that Gangchi is still alive after losing so much blood, Tani believes that Gangchi will survive and is what's keeping him fighting. Young Pung, having been observant earlier, reveals that he had been watching the fight and noted that Gangchi seemed like a completely mediocre fighter until he was injured. It was at that point, when his arm was torn off, that Gangchi retaliated with a punch so powerful it left an impression on Yang Pung. Yang Pung turns to Kim Tani and asks about a craft. Wondering if it's still active, Tani informs him that there are no other registered threats beyond cheap. However, she pauses and reveals that there is one remaining craft, a bit farther away. With a green color, the craft had emerged approximately 5 hours ago, and it is classified as a half-human villain. Despite this, Tani explains that it falls under the purview of the second branch, and since it's classified as green, it doesn't require the intervention of a higher-level supervisor. But Yongpung, undeterred, instructs Tani to inform the second branch to refrain from taking action. He decides to handle the situation himself. He then asks how long it will take for Gangchi's arms to fully restore, and Tani estimates about 20 minutes. Not bad. When she asks why, Yongpung simply says that he is curious about something and wants to confirm it with himself. He adds that he is eager to see whether the new applicant is interesting or not, and with that, he prepares to take Gangchi along with him to investigate the remaining craft. Even the monster is worried about Gangchi, urging him to wake up. When Gangchi does, the monster is happy and even considers him to be a real hero. He recalls hearing that if someone becomes like that, a hero will definitely appear, and he's glad to see that it's actually true. Now seeing Gangchi as a hero, the monster then explains to Gangchi that the reason he came to this place is because those who bullied him back in the office, and he wants to kill them. However, the monster realizes that being stronger than others is exhilarating, which is why he has already killed a lot of bullies. Now, he wants to know from Gangchi how strong he can become, since that's the main reason he waited for him. But the monster is now confused, seeing Gangchi asleep with a label tied around his neck, saying that he's going to kill everyone. This makes the monster wonder if Gangchi thinks he's weak, and he believes Gangchi is being proud because he sees himself as a strong man, which makes him very angry. So the monster decides to attack Gangchi. Gangchi, seeing this, tries to run away for his life, as he's not prepared for it all. But the monster bites him on the arm. Yet the monster isn't ready to stop fighting. Thinking Gangchi is weak, he makes sure to knock Gangchi out. And just then, Pung appears, shocking the monster because he doesn't know when he arrived. However, he boasts to Pung that he's strong enough to knock out a hero. As he's saying this, Gangchi's battery restores a bit, and he wakes up. The monster can't believe it, as he didn't expect Gangchi to wake up after all the attacks he had given him. The monster now makes up in his mind that he will completely kill Gangchi. He prepares himself and launches a powerful punch at Gangchi. However, to his greatest surprise, Gangchi endures the punch, and by the time the monster pulls back, Gangchi's battery is fully restored. With renewed strength, Gangchi retaliates, fighting back with such force that the monster cannot withstand his attacks. As Gangchi continues to fight, Pung watches in shock, observing everything unfolding before him. Gangchi doesn't stop fighting until he completely crushes the monster, his anger fueling him. When Gangchi defeats the monster, he goes to report back to Pung, kneeling before him. Pung, pleased with Gangchi's efforts, expresses his happiness to have him back. It is then that Gangchi remembers the man's name. Meanwhile, in the city, a half-human visits Utopia to tell her that he shares the same dream as her team. He believes that, as partners, their relationship can always be trusted. He then brings up an issue, informing her that the superiors are skeptical about the news regarding their bear chief YouTuber, who is said to be missing after a certain event. After listening to the half-human, Utopia responds by explaining to him about the meat she is eating. She says that no matter how skilled the chef is, the meat cannot be cooked properly. The only way to truly enjoy it is to let the enzymes and the microbes break down. She advises him to wait, telling him that once the meat has rested and been properly prepared, it will bring out the best flavors. Utopia suggests that the half-human wait patiently, as she will allow him to taste the meat once it's ready. Gangchi is brought to the hospital for treatment. When he wakes up, he first thinks about his experience with the monster. He wonders how he ended up in the hospital and figures it must have been the company. So he leaves his room to check if he can see anyone from the company. Just as he's about to leave, he sees Poong talking to Dae-young. Dae-young tells Poong that he wants to quit because he wouldn't have taken the job if he knew it would be like this. He feels he can't handle the job and thinks it's impossible, especially because it's so terrifying. While Dae-young talks to Poong, he feels scared of him. He can't express himself well. So when Poong asks him why he's quitting, Dae-young can't say what's on his mind. He wants to tell Poong that he finds him more terrifying than that villain, but he can't, so he stays quiet. By then, Poong gets angry and tells Dae-young to leave immediately. He regrets saving him in the first place if Dae-young wasn't going to join his team. Poong walks away, upset. Outside, Poong sees Tani running after him. She didn't know he was at the hospital, but he tells her he's about to leave. Tani says goodbye and thanks him for his hard work that day. Poong remembers to tell her to erase Dae-young's memory and make sure to send him home. Tani is shocked by this and wasn't expecting it. Poong explains that Dae-young is just a spectacle. Later, Poong reflects on Tani's decision to accept someone like Dae-young into their ranks. He understands that there is no limits to the people they can choose, but he can't shake the feeling that it doesn't mean they should waste their time on someone who lacks courage. He feels that someone like Dae-young, who seems so afraid and unwilling to face challenges, doesn't belong on their team. Tani, sensing his frustration, apologizes for her decision, but this only makes Poong think further about the matter. It reminds him of Gangchi, and he decides to ask Tani about his decision. She explains that when she checks on Gangchi in his room, he tells her that he is ready to work for them and has no intention of quitting. He makes it clear that he is committed to their cause, and Tani assures Poong that he is not like Dae-young. Poong isn't surprised by her answer, as he expects Gangchi to be different from the others. Just as they're talking, one of Poong's men hurries toward him with urgency in his steps, calling for his attention. The man hands him a phone with a news report flashing across the screen, urging Poong to take a look. The report dominates the headlines, focusing on a missing ship. It is believed that whoever has been on board must have met a brutal end. The news continues, reminding the public that the next year will mark the 13th anniversary of peace. They warn that those who cannot adjust to the changing times will be seen as villains, and anyone who rationalizes violent behavior as a means of achieving their goals will be labeled the same. Villains are those who threaten the peace, those who act against the very progress they have worked so hard to build. The news enrages Poong. He feels the weight of his anger rise as he processes the implications of the report. It is an effort to everything he stands for. He cannot contain his frustration. He turns to Tani, venting his fury at her, blaming her for not doing her job properly. He believes that if she handled things better, he wouldn't have had to deal with this situation. Tani, caught off guard, can do nothing but apologize, though she feels helpless in the face of Poong's outbursts. While they're still in the midst of this tense exchange, Waring walks in, seemingly unaware of the conversation already underway. He cuts straight to the point, addressing Poong with the suggestion that he needs to take a neuropathy test. He even offers to take him to his hospital for the procedure. At first, Poong hasn't noticed Waring's presence, but his words make him look over and realize who is standing there. Poong meets Waring's gaze, and without missing a beat, Waring challenges him. He asks if the test he has suggested isn't something that should have been the responsibility of the leader. Poong doesn't answer Waring's right away. Instead, what really makes him angry is the fact that Waring keeps addressing him by a name he does not want to be called. His anger builds up as he warns Waring never to call him that name again, making it clear that if he does, he will kill him on the spot. But Waring doesn't stop. Instead, he continues calling him by that name, even teasing him further. Run my fade if it's about it. This behavior irritates Xiaonul, the director of the heroes, who walks in just then. He hadn't expected to see this kind of attitude from Waring, especially when there are serious issues at hand. Xiaonul is visibly upset, not understanding why they are behaving this way when there is something much more important they should be focusing on. Turning to Poong, Xiaonul asks if he's seen the news yet. He questions why Poong hasn't realized the gravity of the situation and stresses that he should have been taking things seriously. Xiaonul explains to Poong that the monster chief has clearly reached the final stage of its evolution. However, What was found at the scene wasn't the monster chief, but a discarded piece of it, which Chon-Yul thought should have been impossible. Despite the tension, Chon-Yul can't hide his admiration for Tiny, who he believes is the most skilled technician he's ever worked with. He expresses his trust in her expertise, stating that he is certain she would never make a mistake. Because of this, Chon-Yul decides that the noise surrounding the news will be handled by their headquarters. He points out that there are no leads connecting them to the incident, and he expects that eventually the government will move on after issuing their statements, even though he knows it will be unpleasant. Chon-Yul understands the importance of maintaining the balance of peace in this era, and with that in mind, he volunteers to take responsibility for the fate of the heroes. Pung, however, is not fooled by the way Chon-Yul pretends to show concern, as he knows that the director's true intentions are far from what he's letting on. Pung understands that Chon-Yul's real purpose is coming there isn't to express his care and worry. Chon-Yul, sensing Pung's doubt, responds by asserting that he cannot deceive him and that he has made his intentions clear enough for Pung to see. He makes it clear that there is no need for any further pretending. With the air still tense, Chon-Yul shifts his focus and goes over to speak to Tani. He mentions that he heard some interesting news from Waring earlier that morning, which catches Tani by surprise. She had no idea what Chon-Yul was referring to, which leaves her momentarily puzzled. Chon-Yul, noticing her confusion, explains that the news he heard about was about a promising young intern in the first branch of the Heroes program, a young man named Gangchi. The mention of Gangchi immediately piques Tani's curiosity. Chon-Yul adds that it was, in fact, him and Tani who had personally chosen the young intern themselves, which Waring had confirmed to him. Chon-Yul's interest grows as he listens to the details. He's the type to appreciate a person who is strong, and from what he's heard, Gangchi seems like that type of person. Chon-Yul admits that this is the exact reason he rushed over to the hospital to see for himself what the young man is like. He also casually mentions that he knows Tani had chosen Gangchi for the program without going through the usual verification process, to which Tani confirms. Chon-Yul, however, gently chides her for not following the standard procedure, reminding her that the headquarters has specific guidelines in place for a reason. While he acknowledges her expertise in choosing Gangchi, he still considers it somewhat inappropriate to bypass the regular checks. Despite this, Chon-Yul expresses his desire to meet the intern in person, further adding that he would like to understand Pung's objective regarding Gangchi. Pung, however, seems less than enthusiastic about Chon-Yul's meeting Gangchi. He simply tells Chon-Yul that Gangchi doesn't have any official objective, since he is just a part-time intern. Although Pung doesn't want Chon-Yul to meet the intern, he doesn't express it outright. Instead, he seems to avoid the request by claiming he has other tasks to take care of. Chon-Yul quickly picks up on Pung's reluctance and presses the matter. He insists that Pung find someone else to take him to Gangchi, but Pung, who is clearly trying to avoid this responsibility, continues to look for excuses. Chon-Yul recognizes Pung's attempt to avoid the task, refuses to let him off the hook. He reminds Pung of an important tradition that the first branch master must uphold. He explains that it is customary for the branch master to personally accompany and vet any new intern, as it is a symbol of the master's personal involvement and responsibility in the selection process. This tradition, he emphasizes, is unique to the Heroes organization, and it's a responsibility that must be honored. Chon-Yul's tone makes it clear that he isn't just suggesting this, but it's an expectation. Given the weight of the tradition, Chon-Yul asserts that it is Pung's duty as the first branch master to follow through with this process. However, Pung, not eager to comply, questions whether Chon-Yul is certain that he himself was the one who actually chose the intern. At that moment, Chon-Yul realizes that the decision to select Gangchi wasn't entirely his own, but rather a joint decision made by Pung and his team. Despite this, Chon-Yul remains firm in his stance, insisting that Pung should be the one to take responsibility for showing Gangchi around, as he believes it would be irresponsible to pull Waring away from his other duties for too long. Later, Pung finds a way to get Gangchi out of the hospital. Driven by a surge of anger and determination, his mind is clouded with the thoughts of violence, and the frustration builds up inside him, making him feel as though he could kill anyone who crosses his path. As he drives away from the hospital, his focus sharpens and his thoughts grow darker. Once they are on the road, Pung turns to Gangchi, his voice laced with annoyance as he questions the young man's lack of license. He sneers, wondering aloud if it's because Gangchi is a sociopath, someone who will end up being good for nothing. Gangchi calmly responds that he's just a high school student, and that's why he doesn't have a license yet. But Pung interrupts him, frustrated, feeling that being a high school student isn't a good enough excuse. The tension between them hangs in the air. Gangchi, sensing the shift about the verification test, wanting to understand what's ahead of him. Shongyul, who is listening in, explains that the test is designed to assess if Gangchi has the potential to become a hero within a few days. It won't be too demanding, more of a verbal assessment, but one that could determine if Gangchi has the qualities needed to move forward. Pung, confident in Gangchi's abilities, assures him that he's sure he can pass the test. He promises Gangchi that once he's done, his job will be far more exciting. Pung's words seem to carry an air of anticipation as he's eager to show Gangchi something beyond the trials ahead. Later, when Gangchi gets home, he explains everything to his father. His father, clearly proud and pleased that his son has managed to secure a position with the company, expresses his happiness for him. He tells Gangchi that they won't see each other for at least 3 days, since the test will be tough. His father, though proud, isn't comfortable with the idea of Gangchi working outside for such a long time without seeing him. He sighs and says he plans to speak to Gangchi's supervisor about the situation. His protective instincts are kicking in. Meanwhile, Pung hasn't left. He's still waiting outside. When Gangchi points him out, his father looks back, recognition slowly dawning on him. He studies Pung's face carefully, trying to place him. After a moment, he asks Gangchi if Pung also offers private loans, wondering where he might have seen him before. Gangchi doesn't respond. Instead, he simply bids his father goodbye, telling him he has to leave. His father, reluctantly, lets him go, realizing there's nothing he can do to stop him. Gangchi quickly joins Pung and tells him he's ready to leave. They drive off together, but Gangchi mentions that Pung still has one more place to take him. Pung agrees to drive him there without hesitation. When they arrive, it's the same man who once paid for Gangchi's taxi fare. Gangchi, feeling grateful, goes to thank him for his kindness. However, the man doesn't seem to recognize Gangchi at all. He looks at him blankly, wondering who this young man is. Gangchi doesn't bother to reintroduce himself. Instead, he quickly runs away to Pung's car, signaling that he's ready to leave. Pung, already aware of Gangchi's quick departure, doesn't seem to care much about the interaction. As they drive off, Gangchi turns to Pung and quietly thanks him for saving him earlier. He's grateful for Pung's intervention, but Pung's response is cold. He tells Gangchi to shut up, his tone sharp and dismissive. At the company, as Pung and Gangchi arrive, they are met by Lee Seok, the director of the company's medical division. Seok, with a measured tone, informs Pung that he's been waiting for him. He comments almost nostalgically that it has been 12 long years since Pung last visited this place. Pung, who has never been one to engage in pleasantries, responds matter-of-factly, saying that there was never any reason for him to come back, especially given how unpleasant this place smells. Seok, momentarily stunned by Pung's bluntness, seems to struggle with how to respond, as he was not expecting such an honest and harsh remark from someone of Pung's stature, especially considering he hails from the prestigious first branch. Pung, unfazed by Seok's reaction, nonchalantly adds that unlike Seok, who appears to live here like a caged man, he doesn't restrict himself to such a confined lifestyle. Seok, still processing Pung's words, glances over at Gangchi, who has been standing quietly behind Pung throughout the exchange. His eyes widen as realization dawns upon him that Gangchi must be the new intern he had heard about. However, to his surprise, the sight of Gangchi, a normal high school student, raises a few questions in his mind, especially regarding the young man's desire to join the hero's company. Seok, his curiosity piqued, turns to Gangchi and asks him point blank what motivates him to join a company like this, one that is undoubtedly filled with danger and high expectations. Without hesitation, Gangchi responds with a calm yet determined expression, stating that his goal is simple, to reach the top. His answer is clear, unambiguous, and seems to resonate with Seok, who considers it for a moment before nodding in acknowledgement. Seok then looks toward Cheon-yul and gives him a subtle instruction to escort Gangchi to the examination room, where he will begin the rigorous process that will determine whether he has what it takes to be a part of the hero's company. Pung, whose patience is clearly wearing thin, decides to leave. However, before he goes, Seok, ever the host, invites him to stay for a rare black tea drink before he departs. Pung, initially reluctant and unwilling to entertain the offer, doesn't respond right away, choosing instead to remain silent. Siak, ever the persuasive individual, senses Pung's hesitation and calmly reassures him that everything he might need is already prepared, and there would be no further delay if he stays just for a moment. Reluctantly, Pung agrees, realizing that declining would be impolite, and thus they settle down to enjoy a drink, their conversation continuing in the background. As the two sip their tea, Siak, always the curious one, raises a question that has been on his mind. He asks Pung, with a hint of surprise in his voice, why is it that Pung, of all people, is the one to bring Gangchi to this company? He knows Pung well enough to understand that such a gesture is out of character for him, as it's not typical for Pung to personally escort anyone, especially someone like Gangchi, a new intern with no clear ties to Pung's world. Pung, clearly not in the mood for small talk, leans back in his seat and sighs before responding. He admits with a touch of reluctance that he never actually wanted to come to the company in the first place. However, he explains that his actions were not driven by choice, but rather by the trick that Chonyul had pulled on him, forcing him to handle the situation. Siak, observing Pung's reaction to Gangchi, takes a moment to comment on the situation. Pung, not want to hide his feelings, admit that he finds Gangchi intriguing. However, despite his curiosity, there's something about the young man that doesn't sit right with him. Pung is quick to add that he can't quite put his finger on it, but something feels off. Not wanting to delve deeper into the conversation, Pung abruptly stands up, muttering that Siak isn't much fun to talk to. He makes his way toward the hallway, ready to leave the company. As he walks down the corridor, his mind drifts to what he could be doing back at home. However, just as he's about to leave, he notices Gangchi coming out of one of the rooms. The sight catches Pung's attention, and his curiosity is piqued. When Gangchi explains that he has been disqualified and told to go home, Pung's confusion only deepens. It doesn't make sense to him, as he had believed that Gangchi was only meant to take the basic test, one that should not involve any form of qualifications or disqualification. At that moment, Chonyul steps out of the room, seemingly ready to explain the situation. But before he can offer any clarification, Pung interrupts, asserting that Gangchi is not someone who should be classified in the basic category. His statement leaves Chonyul perplexed, as he doesn't fully understand what Pung means. To clarify his point, Pung begins asking Gangchi some basic questions about his studies, but to his dismay, Gangchi fails to answer any of them correctly. Each responds more bewildering than the last. Pung's frustration mounts as he realizes that Gangchi's lack of basic knowledge doesn't match the potential he had initially seen in him. His temper flares, and Pung's power begins to surge, causing a noticeable disturbance throughout the company. The building seems to hum with the energy he's releasing, and tension grows thick in the air. Recognizing the threat of the situation, Tani is called in to handle the matter. She approaches Pung with a calm and steady demeanor, doing her best to keep him under control. She urges him to calm down, understanding that the situation is spiraling. Tani guides Pung out of the company, ensuring that he gets home safely. She stays with him, making sure that he settles down, allowing the anger to dissipate before she leaves him to rest. After ensuring Pung's safety, Tani returns to the company, where she finds Chonyul waiting. He immediately starts to express his growing curiosity about Gangchi. He recalls something Gangchi had said earlier in the hospital, and it has been occupying his thoughts. Chonyul now understands more clearly why Waring would have chosen Gangchi for the program. As he reflects on the situation, he remembers the monster grade cheap, which had been classified as yellow. This particular grading causes some confusion for Chonyul, as it's unusual for someone without master-level skills to be approved for such a grade. He cannot comprehend how Gangchi could have passed the test without meeting the necessary qualifications. Tani, hearing his thoughts, explains her side of the story. She admits that she misjudged the monster's grade, having assumed that its cute appearance meant it didn't require a master-level intern to handle it. Because of this, she believed the basic-level intern like Gangchi would be sufficient. Upon realizing the mistake, Tani offers a sincere apology to Chonyul, acknowledging that she had miscalculated the situation. Her regret is clear, as she admits that she should have been more careful in her assessment of the monster's grade, understanding consequences for her error. As Tani continues to reflect on the unusual circumstances surrounding the monster, she can't shake the feeling that something's off. Normally, the approach of these creatures is either a direct, aggressive assault or quite stealthy attack. But this time, things have been different. She can't quite pinpoint the reason for the shift, but she knows that there must be a deeper explanation. The monster's change and behavior doesn't feel coincidental. Eager to find answers, she approaches Chun-Yul to inquire about it. However, Chun-Yul, just as puzzled, admits that he doesn't know the specific cause behind the change in the monster's approach either. All he can say, with certainty, is that there must be a reason, something that is influencing their actions, but he has no clear understanding of what it might be. Meanwhile, in a separate room, two men are engaged in their own activities. Pause. One of them is fixated on his phone, scrolling through the news with great interest. He is so absorbed in what he is reading that he doesn't notice the other man, who has to remind him to focus on his work instead of getting lost in his phone. The distracted man, however, seems unbothered by the suggestion, and instead, he casually proposes that they take a break and order some fried chicken and beer to help them get back on track with their work. I want some of that chicken though. The second man, clearly confused, asks why they need to eat before they can focus on their tasks. Not wanting to argue, the first man asks if he doesn't want any, prompting the second man to give in with a simple,
"Just go get it then."
As the first man steps out of the room to place the order, he expects to find the other man who is usually assigned to help with such tasks. However, to his surprise, he doesn't find him in the corridor. This strikes him as odd, as he recalls that the man has not returned for several hours. His curiosity is piqued, and he can't help but wonder why the man is still outside and hasn't come back. The man in question, however, is not simply lost in the corridor. He is inside a separate room, engrossed in the news he is watching. What catches his attention is the update about Cheap. The report states that Cheap has been found in a ruined state, its wool torn, in disarray. This information makes the man pause. He wonders if this is the sign that he has been waiting for. Perhaps he needs to take action immediately, though the exact course of action is still unclear. In a cozy residential apartment, Dae-young is sitting comfortably on the couch, enjoying a comedy TV show. He laughs heartily, thoroughly immersed in the fun of the show, when his phone rings. It's his mom calling, but Dae-young, too engrossed in the show, decides to ignore the call. His attention remains glued on the screen, not wanting to break his focus. Just then, his sister Ji-yu walks in and kicks him, demanding to know if he really just ignored their mom's call. Dae-young, caught off guard, pretends that he didn't know anyone was calling him. Ji-yu, unimpressed, looks at him and says, if he's jobless, he should at least have the decency to answer the phone. She warns him, half jokingly, but with a serious tone, that if he ignores another call, he should consider himself dead. Dae-young, acknowledging her threat, nods, relieved when she leaves the room. As soon as she walks away, he quickly starts looking around for snacks, eager to satisfy his hunger. However, Ji-yu, upon entering her room, notices that her package has been opened. She walks over to Dae-young, who is completely unaware of her approach, and delivers another kick. She demands to know how he could dare sneak into her sacred space without permission. Dae-young, still unfazed, retorts that she told him to clean the room, and that's exactly what he was doing. But Ji-yu isn't buying it. She scolds him, saying he should have stuck to cleaning rather than messing with her stuff. To drive her point home, she holds up a hero recruitment advertisement showing it to him. Dae-young, feeling a bit guilty but still curious, explains that he was just wondering what the advertisement was about. He was simply curious, and the idea intrigued him. He then asks if the company she works for only hands out leaflets. Ji-yu clarifies that it's not her company distributing the leaflets, but another company using their name. She says that the leaflet was only sent as a sample. Dae-young then wonders why so many samples were being distributed, to which Ji-yu snaps at him, explaining that the company is very meticulous about their work. Frustrated by the situation, Ji-yu declares that she can't stand it anymore and needs to go and file a complaint. As she heads toward the door, she asks Dae-young if he is seriously thinking about going to an interview using that leaflet. Dae-young reassures her that he's not that desperate. Before leaving, she tells him to make sure to tidy up the house before she returns. Dae-young, eager to get something to eat, asks if she will be late and if she can lend him $10. Ji-yu storms out of the room, ignoring his requests. However, soon after Dae-young receives a text from Ji-yu saying that she has sent him the money. He smiles to himself, thinking that she is kind. He then picks up the hero recruitment advert again, staring at it as he becomes lost in thought, wondering about its meaning. Meanwhile, Ji-yu is outside, walking and talking to herself. She insists that there is no way she's going to spread those leaflets, as she doesn't want to be associated with a branch that doesn't have any interns, especially when she is trying to become the aspiring ace of the fourth branch. Ji-yu's frustration is clear as she continues to walk, It turns out that she is actually an intern for the hero's fourth branch, and she tries calling the first branch but only gets the voicemail. Unable to make any progress, she becomes even more frustrated and decides that she will go to the first branch in person. Meanwhile, Dae-young, distracted by his thoughts, decides to play some video games. Later, he is seen at a restaurant having a meal. As he finishes eating, he receives a text informing him that he has been rejected for the job interview. Disappointed but unfazed, he heads out of the restaurant, his mind still preoccupied by the TV show he had been watching earlier. On his way out, Dae-young accidentally bumps into a muscular guy, causing him to fall. The muscular guy asks if he's okay, and Dae-young, still in a bit of a daze, responds that he's fine while picking up his beanie and cap. As he does so, he notices the guy vaguely recalling his face. The muscular guy asks again, is Dae-young truly alright? To which Dae-young responds affirmatively before leaving the scene. The muscular guy watches him go and remarks to himself that Dae-young is a very kind person. Dae-young, still wondering about the encounter, can't help but think that the guy looks like a bodybuilder. Later in the evening, Dae-young finishes watching his favorite TV show. Feeling satisfied and relaxed, he glances at the clock. He notices that it's almost midnight. He wonders why his sister isn't back yet, growing a little concerned. Just then, he hears a noise from the entrance, and he assumes it must be his sister. He figures that she might be drunk, stumbling back home. Curiously, he gets up and heads towards the door. He opens the door, expecting to see her, but to his surprise, there's no one there. He stands in the doorway for a moment, confused, thinking it might be some sort of prank. However, he has no idea who would be playing the joke on him. After a few moments, he closes the door and heads back inside. A little uneasy, he heads straight for the snack only to realize it's completely empty. Just as he's about to pull out his phone to call his sister, a sudden blackout plunges the apartment into darkness. Dae-young fumbles for his phone, intending to call his sister, but in his panic he accidentally begins to dial the emergency number instead. As he stands there in the dim light, trying to compose himself, he feels a sudden presence beside him. To his shock, the muscular guy, whom he had bumped into earlier, is standing right next to him. The man calmly remarks that Dae-young must have seen it, referring to the picture that Dae-young and Gangchi had taken with Cheap. Dae-young, frozen with fear, stands motionless as the muscular guy continues, his tone menacing. The man suggests they play a little game. Without warning, he reaches towards Dae-young. Dae-young, paralyzed with fear, realizes he's in a dangerous situation. Ji-yu stands at a distance, gazing at the building where the hero's first branch is located. She had initially come over in a fit of anger, but now that she's here, her composure is returned. Her mind races with worry, wondering if the people inside of the building would be so enraged as to harm interns from other branches. She can't shake the thought of Wind and Flame, two of the most notorious masters of the first branch, known for their violent tendencies. Ji-yu tries to reach out to her senior, hoping to find some guidance or reassurance, but she can't get through. Frustrated and unsure, she decides it's best to leave for the time being. She tells herself that if she looks at the bigger picture, this will be for the sake of heroes. As she turns to head back home, she notices Gangchi walking by. She can't help but wonder who he is to be coming out of the building at such a late hour. Gangchi, meanwhile, is walking home, a book in hand. He reflects on how becoming a hero is no easy feat, but deep down, he feels he's just one step away from achieving his goal. As he walks, he suddenly notices Dae-young waving at him. Surprised, Gangchi approaches him, asking if all his memories have returned. Dae-young, looking at him with determination, claims that he remembers everything now. He explains that he has been waiting for this moment. However, unbeknownst to Gangchi, Dae-young is secretly holding a knife. The villain, lurking from behind a nearby building, watches the interaction with growing excitement. The villain finds amusement in the situation, recalling how Dae-young had once chosen Gangchi out of fear. Dae-young's heart races as he inwardly asks for forgiveness. He didn't want to do this, but he feels he has no choice. His family's safety is at stake, and he believes that this is the only way to protect them. With that thought, he prepares to attack Gangchi. But before he can make his move, Ji-yu, who has been quietly watching, suddenly appears. She launches a powerful kick at the villain, sending him flying backward, and surprising force that pushes him several meters away. Both Dae-young and Gangchi are left stunned, unable to process what just happened. The villain, now facing Ji-yu, asks who she is. Who the fuck? No, I'm playing. Intrigued by their unexpected strength, Ji-yu, anger boiling inside her, retorts that she's a hero. Without hesitation, she launches another attack at the villain. Though he tries to dodge, the attack lands, grazing his arm and causing a painful injury. The villain, surprised by her strength, mutters that he now knows she is Dae-young's sister. He comments that, unlike her brother, she has spirit, a trait he admires. But Ji-yu, refusing to back down, charges at him once more. She angrily declares that the villain is just spewing nonsense, using Dae-young to play his twisted games. Her next strike lands a claw mark across the villain's face, causing him to recoil in pain. He pauses for a moment, trying to make sense of the situation, wondering aloud if Ji-yu is even human. He remarks that her movement resembles that of a dog, agile and relentless. To him, it feels as if he is battling a rabid dog, not a hero, but he finds this exhilarating. He welcomes the challenge, seeing it as exactly what he wanted. Ji-yu, undeterred, charges at him again, her determination clear. But then she suddenly feels a shift in the atmosphere, a sense of foreboding. It's as if she's become the prey rather than the predator. Realizing it's too late that something has changed, she attempts to attack from behind, but just as she closes in, the villain's back transforms into monstrous maw. His back opens up like the jaws of a beast, and in an instant, her right arm is caught in the sharp teeth, narrowly escaping being bitten off. Mocking her, the villain taunts her, asking what happened. She had seemed so fierce and valiant earlier, but now she appears to have turned into a tame dog. This only fuels Ji-yu's rage, but the villain, now fully transformed, reveals his true identity. He is Big Judy. Man, that shit trash. Big Judy, final stage grade yellow beast. Big Judy, now towering and even more terrifying, tells Ji-yu not to tire out yet, as the real training has just begun. Meanwhile, Dae-young stands frozen in shock. He can hardly comprehend what is happening before him. His sister? A hero? He never imagined it. But it's not just that. He is horrified by the sight of the villain transformation into something even more terrifying and powerful than before. The gap in strength between them is unimaginable. Realizing that he cannot afford to stand idly by, Dae-young shakes off his shock. His sister is in danger, and if things continue this way, she will die. He knows now is not the time to be paralyzed with fear. He must act, and he must act fast to save her. Desperation fills his heart as he prepares to do whatever it takes to protect his family.